All right, last night, the U.S. House voted along party lines to raise the debt ceiling by $480 billion. Just a half $1 trillion. Now, the timing is important because Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen had notified Congress if the debt limit wasn't raised by this week, then the U.S. government would not be able to pay its bills. President Biden is expected to sign the measure, which will allow the government to pay its bills until December the 3rd, when Congress will have to raise the debt ceiling again. Now, the party line vote is unremarkable in itself, but how it was conducted should give every one of us cause for concern. With me now to explain why is Connor Semelsberger, Director of Federal Affairs for Life and Human Dignity here at the Family Research Council. Connor, welcome back to the program.
Great to be back with you, Tony.
All right, before we jump into the reconciliation bill, taking a look at today, the aspect of education, welfare, and childcare, what was significant about last night's vote to raise the debt ceiling?
It's the proxy voting that the House has implemented because of a COVID measure. But as we talked about yesterday, this is looking to become more and more permanent. Around 166 members voted by proxy yesterday, nearly enough to be a majority, 218. And they voted to, like you said, increase the debt ceiling for 2 more months, kicking that can down the road even more. And the Congress couldn't even dare to show up to actually put the votes on paper.
So let me just say, if those 166 members who until a little over a year ago would have had to show up to vote, had they not shown up and voted, would this measure have passed?
It wouldn't have been likely because the margins needed to pass the vote would have been much less, and it would have been tough to get the right votes there, as many, if not all, the Republicans opposed this debt increase in the House, thankfully. This proxy voting really has the factor to determine vote swings when the members aren't being asked to actually show up and do their jobs.
Well, I thought the members of Congress were vaccinated, and I thought the vaccine protected you from the COVID virus. Therefore, why are they not showing up?
That's what you would think, but with Speaker Pelosi ruling the House with restrictive measures, so much so that folks like us aren't even to meet with staff and talk with legislators because of the restrictive policies they have, even with a mask mandate and even with a vaccine mandate.
So it's more about control. They're seizing this opportunity to literally change the way we're governed.
That's exactly right, Tony.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's go to the reconciliation bill. I want to play another clip of Nancy Pelosi at her press conference where she is asked about if she needs to do a better job of letting people know what's in this bill. Let's play clip number 6.
Do you think you need to do a better job at messaging and going forward? How do you sell this if ultimately you have to?
Well, I think you all could do a better job of selling it, to be very frank with you, because every time I come here, I go through the list. Family and medical leave, climate, the issues that are in there. And but it is true, it is hard to break through when you have such a comprehensive package.
So is that how she looks at the media? It's their job to sell the Democratic agenda?
It appears so, that the media is, again, in cahoots with this Democrat majority. They can tell that their own package is not popular with the American public, and so they want the corporate media to go out there and sell this bill, the inflation that comes with it, the dismantling of families. She feels it's the media job to do it, not hers.
Okay, this whole $3.5 trillion, give or take $1 trillion or $2 plan, his Build Back Better, which is actually, as I mentioned earlier, the Build Government Bigger plan. Let's talk about its impact upon the family. Let's look at what it does when we're talking about childcare. What does it do in terms of childcare and really the structure of the family and those that are trying to raise their own children?
Yeah, this is one of the most damaging parts of this package, in my opinion. They're trying to, kindergarten is not soon enough to put kids into government-regulated programs. They now want to have your kids in a government institution from infancy all the way up to 3 additional years of community college, almost your whole young adult life from infancy and beyond. And the way they do this is to hand out a child care entitlement, but not for those families that decide it might be best for one parent to work at home full-time or even part-time. No, rather, it's a forcing of both parents, the mother and the father, to go into the workforce and put those infants up to the age of 2 and even 3 years old in a government institutional child care program. So it's really not only affecting the young infants at these very formative ages, but also affecting the way parents that have flexibility to choose what's best for them and how they decide to work and care for their own families.
So those families that decide a mom or dad is going to stay home and raise their kids, maybe educate them at home, homeschool them, they are actually forced then to pay for those who would have 2 working parents and want to turn their children over to a government certified child care service from infancy all the way through college, at least community college.
Yeah, it's Biden saying this coastal elite knows better about how you should raise your family than you do. It's saying you need to be working full time, and those folks that decide to stay home and actually care for their own children, do the work it takes to parent, that hard work it takes. Those are the ones paying for those well-off, graduate educated folks in our coastal cities, while the working class of Americans are the ones really paying for it.
All right, so, okay, let's say you do have parents, both parents working, they want to put their children into a daycare, early childhood education, and they say, all right, I want to go to a faith-based provider that would provide this, or I want to have another family member care for my child. Is that possible under this plan?
Actually not, Tony. Now, they don't make this explicit, but in reading between the lines, this is a push to push religious educators out of the way and your actual family units out of the way. While you may be a religious provider through a church or a religious school that might want to offer childcare services or even pre-K services, why you'd be forced out is because you would now be forced, if you take these funds, open yourself up to numerous regulations in terms of your hiring practices, SOGI, sexuality, non-discrimination provisions, which is bucking the norm of when religious providers have been used to be able to provide childcare services. What they say now is you religious groups need not apply.
So this would be, like we were just talking in the previous segment about the Loudoun County and their bathroom policy, which is something that the Department of Education has been pushing schools to do. So I assume that these daycare and early childhood programs would have to comply with all of this crazy nonsense in order to participate. So you're talking about churches, faith-based, would have to adhere to these crazy policies?
Yep, that's what Biden and the Democrats want. But because of those provisions, in the end result, a lot of these faith-based providers just would opt not to be a participant. And so what that means is all those kids in those low-income families that need this service or would want to use it would be forced to send these children to institutional care run by the government rather than the community church program that might be right up the street from their own house. So it's a real shame that the religious education is seen as a major threat to the ideology of the ruling class here in D.C.
So Connor, let's shift a little bit to the broader issue of marriage. How does the provisions in the reconciliation bill deal with the issue of marriage?
It actually penalizes it. You know, this pro-family Build Back Better plan, as Biden calls it, actually dismantles families and actually punishes you if you have children and are married. And it's appalling because we're seeing record low birth rates and record low marriage rates. So instead of building these things up, Biden's plan would dismantle them. How would that happen? Existing programs that help low-income folks work and earn some additional money. For example, the Earned Income Tax Credit is something that's been around for years and years and years, and it's been really helpful to help single mothers continue to work. But what he does here is actually double the marriage penalty. So if a single woman with a young child earning maybe $12,000 or less decides to get married, she's actually going to be taxed twice what she already is. And actually, at the same time, he triples the benefits, triples it for that same woman that has no children. So there's a disincentivization here to even have children or get married, to the foundational building blocks to actually starting a family.
Now, we have been working over the last decade and a half or so to try to eliminate that, to entice a mother to marry at least remove the financial barriers for a mother of a child to marry the father of the child by removing these artificial barriers. This is erecting additional barriers because it would cost them money to marry the father of the child. And what we know from the social sciences, the child is much better off in so many different ways if the mother and father are married.
That's right, Tony. And that's one of the great benefits of the policy and government affairs team at FRC that has been working so hard on these issues for the last decade. The 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed by, enacted by President Trump really did away with a lot of these penalties. And here we are turning back the clock, which the Democrats talk so much about not wanting to do. They're turning back the clock to penalize marriage once again at a time when we need more and more marriages, stable marriages that last in this country.
I don't want to, maybe I do. I was going to say I don't want to beat the educational hobby horse, but maybe I do, because I think one of the greatest downfalls in this country is how the left has taken over education, and they have taught a generation to hate this country. They've confused them with their, especially in the last 2 decades since the Obama administration, with this radical sexual agenda. This would actually entice parents to put their children into the hands of government from birth all the way up to, then they go to, I guess, to age 2, then they go into early childhood education until they go into kindergarten, and then all the way through 12 years of public education. Then, just in case they didn't fully indoctrinate them, they're going to give them 2 years of community college.
Yeah, it really is their model coming to fruition. They've realized that those 18 years from 5 to 18 is not enough. They need more time and earlier time. Pushing the parents into the workforce, both of them. Let's give me your child as soon as you can. And again, we're going to keep your child into their adult ages, young adult ages, when they could be out in the workforce. Rather, we're going to entice free community college to keep you under our thumbprint at those ages when you begin voting and earning an income and paying taxes. That's when they want to keep you in this ideology even more.
Unbelievable. All right, Connor Semelsberger, thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow we're going to take a look at what other aspects of this reconciliation bill.
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to cover the tax provisions, which is how is this going to be paid for? And like you already mentioned, it's the hardworking families across our country that are paying for this $3.5 trillion boondoggle.
All right, we're going to take a look at that tomorrow. Connor, thanks so much for being here.